Somewhere in the world right now, deep inside a cave, there's a drawing on a wall. It was made over 40,000 years ago by a human being with their bare hands in complete darkness. And when scientists first found it, they could not believe it because the drawing was not simple scratches. It was not random marks. It was an animal, drawn with shape, with movement, with detail. Whoever made it knew exactly what they were doing. The question is, why did they do it at all? What made a person 40,000 years ago decide to pick up a piece of rock and drag it across a cave wall? That answer takes us back further than most people expect. And what we find there changes everything we thought we knew about early humans. To understand when people started drawing, you first have to understand what life looked like before it. Go back 100,000 years. Humans exist. They hunt. They gather food. They make tools, sharp stones for cutting, heavy rocks for smashing. They live in small groups and move constantly, following animals and seasons. They are surviving. Every single day is about food, water, shelter, and not getting killed. And for a long time, that was it. No drawings, no carvings. But then something starts to change. Scientists have found shells with tiny holes drilled through them from about 100,000 years ago, suggesting people were stringing them together to wear. They found traces of red and yellow ochre, a natural pigment from the earth rubbed onto rocks and bones. Not for any practical purpose, just color, just decoration. Something was waking up inside the human mind, a desire to make things that had no survival purpose at all. And that desire was about to produce something nobody had ever seen before. For a long time, scientists believed that drawing began in Europe. In 2018, inside a cave called Leang Bulu Sipong in Sulawesi, Indonesia, scientists found something that rewrote the history books. On the cave wall was a hunting scene. Several animals and wild pigs and small buffalo-like creatures called anoas, being chased by figures holding spears and ropes. The figures had human bodies, but animal heads. It was a story, painted on a cave wall, and it was at least 43,900 years old. This was not the oldest mark ever made by humans, but it was the oldest known example of humans painting a scene, multiple figures doing something, telling a story. Whoever made this was not just drawing an animal they had seen, they were imagining something. They were combining human and animal into a creature that does not exist. They were creating fiction. That is a staggering thing to think about. A person nearly 44,000 years ago, standing in a dark cave in Indonesia with a torch in one hand and a lump of red pigment in the other, making up a story and painting it on a wall. But Indonesia was not the only place this was happening. Across the ocean at almost exactly the same time, humans were doing the same thing, and what they left behind is even more haunting. Around 40,000 years ago, in the caves of what is now France and Spain, humans began covering walls with images: horses, bison, mammoths, rhinoceroses, deer, lions. The most famous of these caves is Lascaux in southern France, discovered in 1940. Inside, the walls and ceilings are covered with over 600 paintings and nearly 1,500 engravings. The animals are drawn with a confidence and skill that genuinely surprises people who see them for the first time. The lines are clean, the proportions are right. Some of the animals appear to be running or turning. The artists use the natural curves and bumps in the cave wall to give the animals a sense of three-dimensional shape. These were not beginners experimenting with a new idea. These were people who had been doing this for a long time. Even older than Lascaux is the Chauvet Cave, also in France, where paintings date back around 36,000 years. The drawings there include lions drawn in groups with overlapping bodies suggesting movement, a pride of lions hunting, frozen in red and black pigment on a cave wall. But here is the question that nobody has been able to fully answer. Why caves? These paintings were not near the entrance where light came in. They were deep inside, sometimes a kilometer or more into the rock, in complete darkness. People carried torches or small stone lamps burning animal fat just to see what they were doing. Why go so far inside? Why paint somewhere no sunlight ever reached? Whatever the reason, it tells us this was not casual. This was deliberate. This mattered to them deeply, and that raises an even bigger question. What were they trying to say? Nobody knows for certain. But historians and archaeologists have spent decades studying the evidence, and a few strong ideas have emerged. The first idea is hunting. Some researchers believe the cave paintings were a form of ritual. Before a hunt, people gathered deep inside the cave and painted the animal they were going to hunt. They believed that capturing an animal in paint gave them power over it in the real world, that drawing the spear hitting the bison would make the actual spear hit the actual bison. It sounds strange to modern ears, but this kind of thinking, and that images have power over the thing they represent, shows up in nearly every ancient culture in the world. The second idea is storytelling and memory. In a world with no writing, no books, no way to record anything, how do you pass information from one generation to the next? You tell stories. You draw pictures. Some researchers believe the cave paintings were a way of teaching. This is what the mammoth looks like. This is how we hunt it. This is what happened on that great hunt 3 winters ago. The third idea is something harder to define. Some researchers think that some of the paintings had nothing to do with hunting or teaching. They were just made because the person making them wanted to, because something inside them needed to put the image out of their head and into the world. That is not a survival instinct, that is something else. Something that separates human beings from every other animal on Earth. The oldest art in the world might simply be the oldest evidence of the human need to create. But drawing did not stay in caves. Eventually it came out into the open, and when it did, it became something far more powerful than anyone could have predicted. Around 10,000 years ago, humans began settling down, farming, building permanent villages, and as communities grew larger and more complex, a new problem appeared. How do you keep track of things? How do you remember how many goats you traded? How much grain is stored? How many people owe you something? When you live in a small group of 30 people, you can remember everything. When your village has thousands of people and complex trade happening every day, memory is not enough. So people started drawing pictures to represent things. In ancient Mesopotamia, around 3,500 BC, traders and administrators began pressing small pictures into wet clay tablets. A picture of a cow meant a cow. A picture of grain meant grain. Lines next to the picture meant how many. These were not art. They were records, practical, boring records of trade and inventory. But something extraordinary happened over the next few hundred years. The pictures got simpler, more abstract, faster to draw. A cow no longer looked like a cow. It became a few quick lines that everyone agreed meant cow. Those lines became symbols. Those symbols became the first writing system in the world, Sumerian cuneiform. Writing did not come from language. It did not come from speech. It came from drawing. Every letter you have ever written, every word you have ever read, it all traces back in a direct line to a person dragging a sharp stone across a wet clay tablet in ancient Mesopotamia, trying to remember how many goats they had. And that traces back even further, to someone standing in a dark cave in Indonesia or France 40,000 years ago, painting an animal on a wall for reasons we still do not fully understand. Here is what is easy to miss in all of this. The oldest drawings ever found were not made by people who were just surviving. They were made by people who had enough safety, enough food, enough shelter, that their minds could wander somewhere else. They looked at a blank cave wall and felt something pull at them. Not hunger, not fear, something else. The first drawing in human history was not a plan or a map or a practical tool. It was someone saying, I was here, I saw this, I made this. That feeling has not changed in 40,000 years.